the basil that I planted last spring, it's probably hydroponics. Okay, we're going live. Dear friends, I am welcoming you to join this roundtable, which is dedicated to the topic that is called To Mow or Not to Mow? Urban landscape solutions inspired by nature. And we'll be talking about the difference between a lawn and a meadow with its aesthetics, also biodiversity and European tendencies and trends. Because we know that meadows have been adopted by most of societies. Today we have the following participants of our roundtable. Bachmann, landscape architect, who is currently doing a doctoral degree at the Estonian Academy of Arts, author of natural style projects for public spaces. Yaroslav Stuka, graduate of a British Design University, Landscape Design University, who's been the head of his own S&P landscape studio, and who's also the organizer of Warsaw workshops. Igor Sofiulin, senior professor of Bachmann University, a representative of Lomberg Nursery, and landscape architect and nominee of Flower Jam 2019. For those of you who are following our roundtable, I would like to say to you that we'll be more than pleased to answer your questions during our discussion. I'd like to note that broadcast will be recorded and it will be uploaded on YouTube later. Once again, welcome, dear participants. Thank you for joining us. Let me start to give the floor to Elena Polikova, who's going to talk about her experience working with urban meadows. Could you please turn your mic on? Thank you. Hello. I'd like to greet all the participants and my colleagues. And those who are following our roundtable via different channels, especially thanking my subscribers who are watching us via my channel. And I have to say that I've never had enough experience as a landscape designer, and I am here only as a blogger. And as a blogger, I do research of public opinions. And I have an announcement here how Polish authorities and municipalities in Poland have managed to dramatically change public spaces. And I have to say that Poland is a democratic country with elections institutes working really well. And everyone who's running for positions of local authorities has to keep it in mind that they have to satisfy the electorate and the voters. There's no confrontation between our authorities and the public. Every city authority just remembers that if they have the money to spend on landscaping and making life more comfortable and public spaces more interesting, they will do it. And another important thing is the funding from European Union, because on that, municipal authorities can really save a lot of money, because you can always rely on your European Union for funding. Of course, something will be done via budgeting from Warsaw municipality, but there are various ways of funding which can be employed to save city budget. I'm going to show you some images. This is my screen. That's quite an interesting design here. When I posted it on Facebook, this is a hipster style bus stop with a bicycle parking cover, and it houses actually insects with its green roof. And I had a lot of comments saying that no one's gonna inhabit those shelters for insects. And I had to explain to my subscribers that this is not about sheltering insects. It's about actually drawing people's attention to the problem of environment. Attracting the public towards a different outlook on how this should be done. And of course, people are now pretty much aware how to protect environment and how to care for it. But on the part of the city, there's also a lot of work is being done. And we had companies who, of course, do landscape design and already have created a lot of meadows for municipalities and authorities and private projects. And answering questions of my subscribers, they said, it's in vogue, it's in fashion in Poland now, and everything that is in fashion it is beautiful, and everything that is in fashion is beautiful by default. And we're starting to understand that it is indeed beautiful just because it is in fashion. And different planting forms change over time thanks to fashion, because some time ago it could be a flower bed, then it could be a lawn, and now it's a meadow and meadow turf. I'm going to show another photograph to you.
Господи, что ж такое? Вот я боялась. Видите ли вы вот эту фотографию?
Now, can you see that picture? That's probably the most impressive demonstration of what a good-looking meadow looks like. That's basically partly mowed lawn, but if you leave it alone for a while, it could look like this. So we have to understand that this green stripe has not been serviced on purpose. It just grew up by itself. And on both sides of this is a burnt lawn, as you can see. So it grew, it has grown by itself, creating meadows. Not mowing and creating meadows are completely different things. I am strongly against not mowing, strongly against mowing by itself, because if we do not mow, it will automatically turn into meadows. Why did they start mowing along hard shoulders? They actually started doing it because of safety, because they wanted the wild animals and wildlife to be seen by motorists, so that drivers could see animals. And in Poland here, we have no reason to mow hard shoulders and along hard shoulders. And in Russia, it's a money-making question. And there's no ecological background to mowing the lawns along hard shoulders on our roads. That's why we decided to spend a lot of time and effort on directing public opinion towards not mowing. And there was a conference. There was a conference where this topic was discussed, and it was expressed that this view that meadows are not aesthetically attractive enough. But some time passed since then, and opinions have changed. We have such a thing as municipal budget, and it's part of the city budget, because it's divided into neighborhoods rather than regions or boroughs. And on this local level, people can decide what they want more, a pedestrian crossing or a flower bed or a meadow. I was thoroughly shocked by a number I heard, and that is 40% of the local budget is allocated towards improvement of ecology and environment. by the locals. And in Russia, there are currently two waves of arguments. One is strongly for the meadows, and the other is against it. It's a 50-50 situation. And we don't have anything like that in Poland. Because our public opinion is a lot more shifted towards creating natural meadows. I cannot hear you, Lena. There's probably an interruption in connection. There's something wrong with connection. But I think we have actually heard what you have to say. But to sum up, I'd like to show you a few images, and which might explain why people don't want sowing meadows. The thing is that natural-looking self-seeded meadows, people tend to compare to what they see in the backyard, and sometimes what they see in commons, next to dull, gray, grim walls of public buildings. And contrary to that, I'd like to show you some pictures which will demonstrate how great such meadows can look next to institutional buildings. And it's completely different how it's viewed in Poland. For example, we have this building as a black background and a beautiful meadow, which wouldn't look that great if it were next to a dirty paddle. There's some more images I'd like to show you. There's bad connect. I have very bad internet connection today. There's another example of how beautiful a meadow can look next to a building. And there's another very loud example of how a good meadow can look. Look, that is beautiful. What I was surprised by, I was posting a picture of a more design-looking meadow. And everybody liked it. And this picture was taken in front of an office building. And it was in my thread on Facebook, and I had 150 likes and such. And then I just took a picture of an unmowed hard shoulder. And people went mad over this last post of mine. Because people in Russia think that it just cannot be beautiful enough in Russia. And this is just, it's nothing but unmowed hard shoulder. And there's nothing difficult in keeping it like this. All you have to do is just stop mowing. And this will be turned into a natural creation of meadows. We do have hull shoulders that are artificially seeded. And here's an example of what it can look like. That's, for example, a seeded meadow with annual grass varieties. And in 1 year, this hard shoulder looks just like this. I don't know how much budget should be spent on this. And that's more or less all. And I would like to probably come back with some comments if it's needed. But the ultimate goal that we'll have to think of is that we have to make our cities blossom. I haven't been in Moscow for a while, and while I was away, a lot has happened to it, and there are a lot of improvements. And despite it's looking stunning right now, we still have unserviced and uncared hard shoulders. I'd like to tell our audience that the recording of this broadcast will be available on Facebook, and you will be able to show it to everyone you want. Because many people would like to share our roundtables with those making decisions, that is, authorities. And thank you for telling us how this could be done. But let's talk more specifically about what a meadow can look like. I'd like to ask Miroslav Shtuka, a landscape designer who works with urban landscape design, to join us and talk a little bit of his experience of building such spaces. Good day to everyone, to all of our viewers. I'd like to show you a very short presentation that will briefly talk us through flowering and wildflower meadows. Because the notion of a flowering meadows actually implies a lot of different designs and structures that might take different approach in terms of maintenance and service. There are actually many peculiarities and many points that I could talk about, but I would like to go through it very briefly, basing on our experience. Let's start the presentation. Yes, that's the presentation, flower jam of flowering meadows in the city. And we'll be talking about what, which is the topic. The topic of meadows is closely linked to biodiversity in our cities. And we'll be talking about it shortly, basing this conversation on our company experience. And I'm going to talk a bit about how to create them, how to mow them, why to mow them, and when not to mow them. And I will also tell you about seeding flowering meadows. Next slide. That's our company. We create. We've had a lot of urban space projects in different cities in Russia, in Yekaterinburg, and in Warsaw, where we have our representative offices. We always consider every aspect of ecological and climate specification of an area, and we make climate and ecology based decisions, and we're actually dependent on these two factors, and we try to create our projects according to this. So what? Biodiversity in the city. Here we're talking about urban biodiversity. And we do not see the city as a area with different places dedicated to different activities. We see the city rather as a biological space. And we design our projects keeping in mind that a city is dependent on ecology and environment depends on the city, and they actually dictate their conditions to one another. Next slide. Why? Why flowering meadows in the cities? And why flowering meadows should be implemented in the cities? They have to be interesting to look at, and they have to be attractive for citizens. The problem is urban soils, because not of them good enough for flowering meadows. There are a lot of poor soils in the cities, and quite often we have mostly poor soils in the city that do not generate enough fertilizers for meadows. But then we have to think of planting assortment and how to pick plants that are especially good for poor soils.
Сорняки могут и агрессивные травы, они будут больше, быстрее растет, и наш лук возникает.
So if you want to make a meadow in the city on a poor soil, then you shouldn't add fertilizer or anything, because very dense weeding may occur. And also flowering meadows have an ability of keeping water and keeping water balance around them.
некоторые из них это тоже влияет такой тип, но 1 или 2 раза в год это
In our typical flowering meadows can only be mowed 1 or 2 times a year only.
это, наверное, влияет на экономику. И это правда, что есть лобби подрядчиков, которые занимаются уходом.
And of course, there's a mowing lobby because there are a lot of subcontractors who make a living out of mowing such places.
Где жители городов, они сами нажимают администрацию очень сильно, чтобы эти луки были в городах.
But then it depends on the local people who quite often vote for keeping those meadows as they are. Now there are several important types of meadows.
Но между ними они тоже есть последние типы, которые это плавно проходить от одного типа в другой, и мы эти типы используем.
There are several types of meadows, and of course they're all transitional. Some have some parts from one type, and another meadow can have some elements of the other type. And we also try to play upon diversity of species and planting in each type. And first type of a meadow, well, we do not have any structures around or buildings. And then such type of meadow is usually made of annuals, and usually it produces very good results in the first year of planting. And it greatly depends on how often and to what extent we mow it. We saw some of them. And we definitely insert some perennials among annuals. And there are also types of meadows where we only use perennials. And it's usually done on spaces where there's an existing lawn there, and we just add meadow plants. And such meadow has to be taken care of, but the amount of service and maintenance is reduced as with any other natural meadow. The next slide is the use of existing lawns. And that's how to go about creating a meadow. The easiest way is just stop mowing it. Stop mowing an existing meadow. And then we have to wait for plants to grow enough to allow us to understand how we shall continue with the mowing. And we have to watch the plants and see how they develop. But in order to understand what's going to grow well in this space and what's not going to grow well, we need to obviously try it. And this takes time and experience. But this is the easiest way to create a meadow. Sometimes you have to wait for 1 year or 2 years to understand which plants will look good on this meadow and which won't. The next thing, we just take bare soil and put seeds into it, and we sow specific plants, and then we adjust our mowing scheme to that. And it's usually done when there's an existing lawn, and you just add plants to make it look better and more pleasing.
Как уже Лена тоже говорила, они очень популярны с жителями.
And as Lena already said, such projects are very popular with locals. As a developing space, and it is very important for the local citizens to be included and involved in the process of creating a meadow, because it is up to them to actually keep the meadow that will be there. And what's good about such projects is that they really are very good for involving children and locals, because they see how they develop and they can be educated via such spaces. And to make it more natural, and such is the experience, the current experience of European cities, is that herbicides and insecticides are not used in such areas anymore. And there was quite a discovery recently when we discovered that actually bees are much better off living in cities than anywhere else, because in the cities insecticides are not used. So it's not only about aesthetics and how things look, it's also about understanding the biodiversity and ecology. And this in turn will increase the number of people who are interested actually in having such meadows around. But as we know, not everything is good in this respect, because in order for a meadow to prosper, annuals have to interact well with the climate and the area conditions. Lena was talking about a Polish company with whom she met. We worked with them more than 20 years ago, and it was started by a guy who just went about picking up and collecting seeds for a meadow. And it was very important for him to collect local plants, because you always have to adjust your planting to climate and area conditions. And as of now, we have to buy seeds for meadows and bring them to Russia from abroad. And the problem is that there are quite a lot of subcontractors about which Lena previously talked that are not aware of they're not aware of how to actually service such meadows.
Очень быстро мы можем потерять этот звук, и натуральная сакцессия изменяется или в кусты, или...
And because of such subcontractors, we sometimes may lose the meadow altogether because of improper maintenance.
Следующая проблема – это эстетика и рено, потому что тоже, как Лена сказала, очень часто сначала люди во всем против этой эстетики.
And another problem is its natural aesthetics, to which people sometimes react negatively because they have seen a lot of examples of poor, neglected-looking meadows.
Гербицидов, инсектицидов. Это не только что есть прекрасный лук, но на краю мы видим, что эта эстетика, она другая. В Голландии все знают, что это результат этого подхода, никто не против.
For example, in the Netherlands, everybody knows that beautiful meadows are the result of this not using insecticide approach. But
И эта эдукация о этих луках очень важна. Опять, как Лена сказала, в Польше это забрало 15 лет. Я помню.
And it actually took Poland 15 years to come to that perception of meadows. When we asked one subcontractor to make a meadow, our subcontractor said that I have moved to the city from the village and you want me to recreate my village here? No. So it's closely linked to the properties which are there, and it's quite difficult to get subcontractors to understand why such matters are important.
Это тоже очень важный пункт. Я думаю, на этом я окончу. У меня еще есть 2 слайда с примером с Олимпиады в Лондоне.
The final 2 slides, that's a very good example of what was implemented in before the Olympic Games in London in 2012. And it was decided to plant wildflower meadows in Stratford. And they just stopped mowing and then recreated that meadow which was there during the Olympic Games. And there's another place, the city of Sheffield, that shows us the transition from shrubs and hedges towards meadows. And it wasn't difficult to get the locals agree to that kind of transition towards meadows, because they already knew and had experience and understanding of why a meadow is good for the environment and the local area. So it's not only in Russia that we do have resistance when we come up with something new. Habits are a very serious factor in such things and the transition towards more modern forms. Thank you. Thank you, Miroslav. It was very interesting and very structured approach. Thank you very much. In fact, a lot of those who are opposed to meadows in the city, they talk about climate and climate conditions of specifically Moscow. And I'd like to give the floor to someone who has been creating meadows. What do we do with the climate in this respect? So I'm afraid I can't help you with the climate because I I'm unable to change it. Climate is climate. I'll be talking about simpler things and about technology and design and our legislation. The topic that we have been talking about today is nothing new. It's not something that has just been created recently. It's a well-forgotten past object. I remember my alma mater, and I remember we had the subject of green architecture and green design, and we had a professor who expressed his view that was the land surface can be different, and it can look differently, and the turf can be very diverse, and it's very important to keep this in mind. Unfortunately, on the level of legislation, we have this thing that every soil we have, it goes by the name of lawns, which implies automatically that they have to be mowed regularly and every week, which draws attention of authorities who are very well aware of this, and they understand that it's a money-making source. And this attitude to a different soil coverage is formed with time. And talking about flowering soils and flowering turfs and meadows, I talked about it several years ago. And why have we come to being surrounded by a green desert? I talked to the authorities in Sizrin, near Samara, and I was more than inspired to share my experience with them of creating meadows. I came across two people of my age who were the heads of communal services in Sizrin. And they looked at me and said, "Why are you telling us this? We want the lawns. We don't want wild nature, because we have a lot of wild nature just around the corner."
Сейчас я еще немножечко уточню, что именно я имею в виду. Я именно говорю о таких луговых цветущих газонах. Я не говорю о цветниках. And I'm
not talking about flower beds. I'm talking about flowering meadows. And we have to make a division between flowering beds and flowering bedding and flowering meadows. And Miroslav and Lena showed us a lot of beautiful pictures, but they didn't show us the difference between flowering beds and meadows. And if something is a flower bed, it's not subject to being mowed. And if we're talking about annual or perennial plantings within a meadow, it's subject to mowing. We have regulations. We have very certain and concrete regulations as to mowing frequency and everything. And there are certain technologies applied, which dictate how much we can mow and how much we cannot mow. So there are many important conditions that we have to stick to. And Miroslav said, Miroslav made a very good point, saying that we really have to take care of our meadows, because otherwise it's subject to a succession of plants when shrubbing and when shrubs replace actual grass and flowers. So this division between meadows and different types of planting will allow us to understand what we have to mow and what we cannot mow. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to monitor the plantings that I did a few years ago that were created as meadows, and I don't know what they look like now, but they looked really great a few years before. And talking about economics of this, it also depends on how you sow and how you arrange meadows, because if you plant already existing plants, it's a lot more, it's a lot less cost effective than seeding. Talking about flower surfaces that I created out of perennials, they did look great for the first 2-3 years, but then they grew more dependent on the climate and watering and such aspects. So they do have to be maintained. I have a story to tell you. I had some experience 20 years ago. We had an intern from France. His name was Olivier, who was staying with me, with my family, and I took him to work every morning. I had a very small car, and there was no air conditioning, so I kept my windows open at all times. And he kept looking around, and then they said to me, you know that you actually, you are guys very advanced in landscape design and gardening. And I wondered, why are we? And he said, that's quite simple. You're not mowing hard shoulders. And 20 years ago, we didn't really mow hard shoulders. And why did we start mowing them? Probably because of the excessive budgets. And we will not change anything unless we start thinking in terms of saving money and economy. And we have some issues because of our design regulations and construction regulations. Because if something is called this in planting assortment shit, then it has to be this. It cannot be changed. And it's quite often that managers of companies who designing such things, they're headed by ex-military guys who do not know much about landscaping and gardening and meadows. And also there's just a plain problem of where to get the seeds that exist. And I had my own recipes for seed mixtures. I contacted a lot of different companies that sold seeds. I know that in Germany there are companies who sell ready-made mixtures, depending on where this mixture is supposed to be sown. And picking of recipes and mixtures is a problem in Russia. And unfortunately, the mixtures that can be used in Amsterdam or in Germany, they sometimes cannot be used here. As technological as they may be, as advanced as they may be, sometimes they're not suitable for Moscow and Moscow region, because some varieties just do not feel well here. And that's probably all I wanted to say. And if you have any questions, if we have received any questions, and yes, we have some questions. And they basically exclamations. People indeed quite often come across meadow lawns being mowed, and it's done according to existing regulations, and authorities just do not stick to those regulations. And why is it not done is beyond understanding quite often. Why people do not keep meadows as they should be kept according to regulations. It's unfortunately in Russian conditions, it's a matter of legislation and of an order given. If there's no order, we might not get it ever. I want to mention what Marina Ponomaryova said. And she says that our hard shoulders are usually mowed not because of animals, but because of safety reasons, to keep reflective qualities of markings on the road. I probably would agree with this. And mowing of the hard shoulder is not about animal protection, but about road safety and traffic safety. But there are many types of roads that we have here. They can be barriered, or they can have divisions in the middle, or sometimes you have curbs along the hard shoulder. And sometimes there's just obviously there's no need to mow some hard shoulders. And there is a way we can overcome this, which is arranging a gravel strips across along the hard shoulder. I have to say that I've seen this year a lot of unmowed patches on Kat, our circle road in Moscow. I have to say there are narrow strips of mowed lawns, and beyond that, there are quite beautiful natural meadows. Miroslav wanted to say something. I just wanted to say that there are indeed problems with some cities, because you sometimes shouldn't allow the meadows to overgrow. Sometimes meadow grasses and plants are overgrown, and then they play an important role in safety. And we really have to bear in mind that safety is also important. I'd like to also add, talking about seeding, I'd like to touch on this question. Can we do it later? Because the absence of seeds on our market actually makes our discussion unrealistic. And we've been talking about how beautiful flowering meadows are and how much cities need them. And we talked about them as a place as a habitat for not only for people, but rather for animals. But we're not talking about the replacement of all the existing lawns by meadows. I guess I'll take up the role of lawn protector. I guess I will have to repeat what has already been said by my colleagues. There's no contradiction between mowing and not mowing, because it is closely linked to the type of planting, and it's up to every professional landscape architect and designer to decide. It depends on the area, and it depends on what we want to see as a final result. And we have to really divide where we work with meadows or with lawns, and how we work with it and why we do it. Of course, we have a lot of beautiful examples from Lena, and there'll be some more examples coming on from Kazan. But going a few registers lower and talking about the realities of our country, we can either keep alone if we want alone, or we can stop mowing, and then we can keep the variety of grasses and mixed grasses in the most beautiful manner. Or we can add some flowering mixture, wildflowers. And probably there is really a conundrum of definitions, and sometimes meadows or lawns are not precisely defined. Sometimes those who implement meadows in our urban areas just don't know how to do it properly, and they actually break all the rules of seeding and do it without leveling soil. But mostly lawns are made out of specific grasses that basically like it when they're mowed. Some confined spaces or enclosed spaces where there's lawns, or some sports lawns that actually are subject to heavy load, they would not work as meadows. And why sometimes turning a lawn into a meadow may not work, because we have very high humidity. But how our colleagues quite rightfully said, we actually are, because of our ecological situation and our environment, we are a minority. We're now a minority in terms of what is happening in the rest of the world with meadows. But when we come across with barbaric mowing, sometimes where we already have shrubs instead of grasses and very thick stems, and then all of a sudden urban authorities decide they have to rush and mow all of it off. Well, we're talking about something else, because mows do not have to be protected. We're not talking in favor of mows. We're talking, we have to decide whether we should mow or should not mow a meadow. And here we have to talk about the environment in terms of livability of our habitat, and how we can have, say, rest from this lockdown situation. For example, when we would like to go to a park and see something different for a variety. But the way it's done right now, sometimes it's absolutely the way our local authorities go about maintaining and servicing such areas. It's quite often very barbaric. They do mow what should not be mowed, and they do not mow what should be mowed. And that's something that we see every other day. And talking about biodiversity, we have actually discovered that biodiversity is the integral part of the ecosystem, and it's not something artificially made up and something that we just came up with. It's not something fashionable. And here we sometimes just have to keep those beautiful spots that already are there. We should keep them unmowed. If we talk about turning some bits of our parks and gardens turned into meadows. And when we're talking about natural planting and creating natural plantings, there are natural looking planting that is implied to be serviced anyway, and with a lot of perennials that you really have to take care for. And some natural looking plants seeded with perennials, they do have a long surviving beauty effect, and they remain attractive for a number of years, and then they can be referred to as flower beds. And talking about the technology of planting. Sometimes the goal is very simple, because every instance of creating a meadow or a lawn, basically the main goal is to cover the soil and create a sustainable planting level. And sometimes people choose wrong technologies and wrong designs, and sometimes they plant something that is very easily replaced with easily replaced with weeds, and then the whole area is weeded and done in. Even talking about this Olympic Park and about naturally sown slopes, they do look different, say, in May and in June. And natural looking planting there, when they were planted, they were supposed to create a certain effect and to have a certain look, which they, with the passing of time, they for some reason do not look that way anymore. In talking differences in planting, roll turf planting or seeding, the decision which you make in these terms always depends on specific conditions of the area you do it in. And talking about Zaryadye, a very well-known example, most of the planting there was container planting with pallets and not seeding. And when we're talking about seeding and seed mixtures, what it lacks as of now, it lacks technological approach and technology sheds. And a good landscape designer must know how nature works and what's good and what's bad. But he or she, they shouldn't replace scientific research in this respect. And all decisions must be based upon science. And if someone is collecting rare or interesting seeds in their free time, yeah, it's very good, and it's very fair to do that, and they free to enjoy doing it. But when we're talking about big public spaces that have to meet certain requirements, we cannot talk about planting whatever an advanced landscape designer wants. You always have to stick to the requirements of the place. So I stick to the more conservative point of view. And to sum up, what conclusion can I make? There has to be very strict understanding of what we do and what we do it for and how we do it. And we shouldn't just pursue this image of natural look of a meadow or a lawn by all costs. We really have to guide ourselves through what science says here. And unfortunately, talking again about maintenance and servicing, we have a real shortage of specialists in this area, and illiterate approach to this is really very sad and very ruining practice. And talking about planting and seed mixtures for decorative planting, we do not have many of such things because all our cultivation of seeds was more about fodder and as livestock food. Yeah, and that's why landscape designers literally have to pick a handful of this and a handful of that and then decide how they can see. Well, we have some requests from our viewers to share some seeds from Germany with them, if possible. And if we could please buy some for them. And why do we have to export such seeds from Germany?
В городе как бы присутствует природа, у нас ее не так много, да, поэтому для нас это действительно трогает очень сильно, когда вот эти вот какие-то посевные истории.
That's why sometimes when the seeding is successful, and it happens to be successful and good looking inside the city, in our urban environment, then of course it does please the eye very much, especially in places where it is unexpected. But we really have to start rocking this boat in order to attract people's attention. Well, and otherwise we're reduced, and unfortunately we're reduced sometimes to even smuggling some seeds from abroad, which is a funny situation. I think we'll have this topic come up many times. Well, when someone is asking me to send them a link to someone in Germany who sells German seeds, in Poland, we have a special program, a state program dedicated to helping farmers shift from one variety, production of one variety of seeds to another. And for example, there are programs that help farmers cultivate meadow seeds instead of something that they had been doing for a long time. And even though there's no seed cultivation industry in Russia as of now, you can always go to an adjacent field just around the corner behind your home, and then you can always pick up some interesting seeds. And nothing can say no to that, because it's just easy as that.
Мне даже в голову не могло прийти, понимаете, я уткнулась просто в стену. Первые несколько отказов брокеров работать с этим материалом.
I would like to, of course, I would like to go to retail supermarkets and sell such seeds, but I always heard no, we're not ready from wholesale companies and brokers. They never agreed to sell seeds and seed mixtures.
того, что я больше 20 лет в импорте, 8 лет на прямых контрактах, да?
And considering I've been selling planting material for more than 20 years.
Вот этот вопрос мы и поставили в основные.
And now that's why we actually included this question in the list of questions to be discussed today. Why do not we have seed cultivation industry in Russia? I know a company that sells up to 300 kilos per month of such seeds, and it is indeed a very good business. That's what they sell in retail. And what Ludmila very wisely pointed out is that there has to be scientific work done, and there has to be an ongoing process of certain landscape studies, and this may be, that's how we will be able to change public perception of flowering meadows and the need for them in the cities. And we have we now have an opportunity to watch a very short video, a video that was shown during a seminar or a workshop. It was Noel Kinsbury who showed it to us originally, and Cassian Schmidt, who's the keeper of Hammenhof Botanical Garden. And it'll be Cassian Schmidt, who couldn't join us in person, but shares his experience with us, and he supported the idea of this particular roundtable, and he's going to show us a part of his Hermannshof Botanical Garden done by him, and how a mixture called Silver Summer that was planted 20 years ago, what it looks like now, and it was in June. The video was taken in June.
Ну что же,
Well,
по-моему, результат впечатляющий.
well,
Хороший срок.
the result is impressive enough, as I think. Do I get it right that it was actually planted?
Мне кажется, вот это как раз пока наш путь. Как и подсев существующее разнотравие, либо посев как бы вот, да, уже готовых растений. Пока то, что мы можем себе позволить,
If this mixture was planted, then it's probably also a way for us to go. And I'd like to give the floor to Vitaly Panteleev, and maybe he has something to say about on the question of buying seeds. And we'll continue discussing what we have been discussing so far. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Hello, colleagues. Can you hear me all right? Well, I don't find it the competence in me it's very important to make distinction while translating, basically, between planting and seeding. But seeding are basically ready-made plants that are ready to be put into soil, as opposed to seedings and seeds. Well, talking about availability of seeds, we're actually all in the same boat here, because I myself have no idea where to get them. We do find ways to get seeds, and we obviously reduced to having to do it, and we try to develop by trial and trying this and that, and public domain expects us to satisfy their needs and demands. Now I'd like to get to our presentation. Thank you for making it. Today I'll try to share our very modest experience with you. Can we please go to slide 1? This is slide 1. This talking about experience of sowing seeds in a landscape. We do not have a vast experience, but since 2016, we realized that there's actually a huge shortage of planting materials and seeding materials. And when we were invited to Kazan to work on a project, we started, actually, we do not have material to cover most of the parks. And then we started choosing and picking materials and variants for seeding. It's basically woodland, and it's a forest in the center of the city, and there are open spaces designed for activities. And we were lucky enough to hold similar views. All the participants of the project and our team, we shared our views and our experience. And since our main contractor was a municipal institution, our collaboration was quite interesting, though not very easy. And what we had available was a fodder mixture. And so we had to make do with what we had available at that time. And here we can see the result of subcontractor first. Since it was the first experience of our subcontractor, it resulted in this, what we can see here. And we told them that the space had to be watered and had to be mowed, and it was a bit of a discovery for them because they had not expected it. We decided to emphasize certain areas in this project that we wanted to be left self-recuperating, and zones that would have to survive for the next several years on their own. And this is the exact place that recreated itself without our assistance. Next slide, please. This is the same fragment. There were a lot of construction works going around, but still the plants were able to survive. This here, a picture from this year, we can see a big open area dedicated to events. And it's very dense planting of corns, but slowly but surely they are replaced by flowers. And that's a very good example of a lawn being arranged next to a meadow. And the lawn here can work very well with events and a meadow that cannot be used for walking on it. There are pathways around both areas where you can walk, and since there are pathways and paved sections you can walk on, this keeps meadow alive and intact. We, for some reason, had a shift in natural processes in this meadow and in this planting. And since we had a time shift with our spring, not all the plants stopped hibernating. some of them are still hibernating. This park itself is quite a cozy place to be, and it's good for jogging and other activities. In this park turned out to be a real attraction for local people, which mainly reside in sleeping districts of the city. And that's the difference between the year 2018 and this year. And we can see the difference in color. And there were a lot of precipitation in rains 2 years ago, and we had definite shortage of rains this year. That's the difference. That's why the difference. So the goals that we plan for ourselves is the getting away from lawns as the main surface, minimal usage of local soils. This is a fragment of park in Atna, and I had personally worked on that project, and I was the one to decide what to do with it. And we had to make do with all we could get. We had about 20 varieties in planting. What's interesting about this project? We had a planning scheme as a legacy, and it was divided into different theme zones. And what was interesting for us and quite challenging is to see the reaction of local people to this park. The challenge was to recreate real nature in the center of the city and try to compete with it with real nature. You can see the brown rectangulars. They actually replicate haystacks, and that's how the two different surfaces interact with one another. In order to make it a better looking place, we had to use potted plants and potted planting. And that's, you can see aboriginal plants popping up. We did hope that they would appear, and they eventually did. And I have to also say that there are quite a lot of agricultural fields around, and there are a lot of regulations as to how everything can be planted in this area. And most of the planting, natural planting there, doesn't look at all the way we managed to make it look. And I do not agree with this notion of meadows recreating natural look, because it's not that easy to to see such exact meadow in natural habitats. And the two goals that we had, creating an image of a meadow with decorative elements and planting potted plants. And here's another property in Matyushina. It's a private property. Since we do a lot of projects in private property, how can we fill the area, a big area, if we cannot use pots? There's 700 square meters of flower beds. But the owner wasn't willing to splash out on it and spend a lot of money, so that's why we were reduced to using a very primitive grass mixture. This here is a more vivid example of what it looks like. These are the plants that we were able to collect at that time. And there's another thing, there's sowing under fruit trees as an affordable alternative and creating a shape. That's a private property in Zarechia. About 2,000 square meters initially, but then the client bought another piece of land.
И получился проект. Здесь мы на абонете модуля видим. Так лучше? Можно продолжать?
Да, спасибо большое.
Здесь мы разделяли посевную часть от декоративной.
This here we used divisions to basically and partitions to divide the part that was seeded from the part that was planted. And this part of the property here was designed to provide walking spaces where people could walk, and we also planted some varieties using potted planting, and as well as raspberry and other berries. And what I like about it, this bit can easily be redone if there's a need for it. And this picture demonstrates the transition of untouched nature in the lawn. And you could always add some certain plants to that natural planting. And decorative plants can easily be added to that. And they do coexist, but at the same time you can see there's very clear division between the lawn and the meadow part. It was very important for us it was very important because there's a very young family, and we wanted to create a space that would be interactive enough for the children to play with. And children are starting to perceive this natural beats quite naturally as the natural habitat. And that helped the children basically to blend in natural ambience as opposed to growing next to a bare lawn. And what we wanted was to divide the sections and leave natural planting and plant potted plants. And only local soil was used. One of our latest works, that's the project we implemented next to a big shopping center. And our goal was to watch people reaction towards this new format of greening. We wanted to recreate the combination of agricultural field with specific varieties that are usually used in agriculture, with decorative plants. And again, we used some potted planting. This is the first year of its existence. We actually miscalculated our planting mixture, and that's why annuals competed very badly with perennials. And people obviously like that design very much, and took pictures of it frequently. These are sunflowers, which didn't actually blossom until very late in the summer, and this year we're expecting them to blossom very soon. That's a path leading towards along the walls of shopping center. And this, what it looks like this year. There was unfortunately a lot of clover grass who started to suffocate, to strangle other grasses. And some of the grasses did not survive last winter. And this is the new wave of mixture. Again, it's quite belatedly.
И мы тоже приветствуем биоразнообразие, всячески это демонстрируем, потом пропагандируем.
We definitely are for biodiversity, and we really support the notion of biodiversity. And we're lucky enough to have the client supporting our ideas. Next slide, please. This is a growing wave. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to attract people's attention to the new format of greening, and to support a recognizable image of agricultural fields in natural meadow, and play upon a combination of shrubs and meadows. This is our latest work. from this year, and we learn as we work, and we decided to go for prune shrubs here to be combined with flowering mixture, meadow mixture. And we think that it's very important to present such areas to the public in a proper way, so that they can be seen from a distance, and so that they attract public attention. And we do work, we work a lot on the mixture and how to arrange way of blossoming and blooming, and depending on season, depending on climate, etc. And to what extent we use spring plants. By the way, we have this question. And this was the question from one of our viewers. Yeah, there was a question from our audience if we plant bulbous plants. As you can see here, we do. And this is how this space is transformed. And that's how we program the waves of blossoming, and which you can see that some plants blossom at one time and some plants blossom at another time. And we have to diversify, obviously, this approach. And the final question is to mow or not to mow. On the left, you can see a field after grass has been cut. And this on the left is an instance of barbarism and killing the plants. And timing is very important with mowing. If it was unfortunately done way too early to keep the grass healthy, and it's very sad that because such mowings greatly reduce sustainability of the grass and planting. And there are many spaces around shopping centers, for example, which by themselves have formed their natural set of varieties. And all we have to do is basically work out a plan of servicing such areas and have it approved with the client. And we actually have to, we can here create something new. And basically all we need to do working with spaces like this is basically to frame this and to arrange a beautifully looking frame around it.
уже создает смеси.
This here was someone who already creates seeding mixtures. That's a little bit of a stretch to say that we are creating our mixtures, but at least we're learning and we're starting to do it. And it took, well, anyways, it took Miroslav 15 years to be able to create his own mixtures. So we have a lot of very practical questions from our viewers about mowing under the trees, and unfortunately we don't have much time to answer those questions, but at least today we have been convinced that there are specialists who can work with what we're talking about today. There is a demand for special seed mixtures and combinations of plants, and there's demand for container planting. And I'd like to give the floor to another of our guests, Karen Bachmann, who is the author of many projects for public spaces. But she will tell us incidentally how else can we create spaces.
Hello. Will you show this presentation also? Yes. Yes, I'm landscape architect, and but today I'm only showing one or two of our objects because just to explain why we are now testing special way how to create semi-natural plant communities. I have to apologize. I'm really sick. That's why I'm quite slow and not maybe so good speaker, but I'm trying. I was listening to you all, and it was very interesting. I was laying in bed, but now I'm up. This is not this famous virus. This is something else. Next slide, please. This is Estonian National Museum, and we started this project. I think it was 13 years ago. It was opened 3 years ago, and now this picture is taken. This was the first summer. Now the plant community is totally different. It has more other kind of plants. This is this trifolium, which was taking over in the first year. The thing with those semi-natural meadows in them, we actually call it curated biodiversity. We have come up with this kind of term that describes how we maintain. They are not natural, but they are not also semi-natural in the way that semi-natural actually means that the animals are somehow involved. They are eating it, or the plants are their final food. So this curated biodiversity, we describe how we do it, how we curate. When we don't like something gets too much, we will take it out. This is not like all natural. And the main problem in Estonia and also in everywhere is the people's attitude, because they say that this is ugly, you should mow all this away. And this is the case even now. People call to the museum director and ask if their mowers are broke or what, and they will come themselves and take it all away. And during this all our work on my company is I have my own landscape architecture office, and this is also like 10 years old. And all this time we have tried to use everywhere these semi-natural plant communities. But only now we started to succeed. Please, next slide. Next slide, please. This is also Estonia National Museum. We had we digged some new ponds there, and this was also a big fight that not the museum people themselves, but the visitors, they all asked why this is needed, why don't you mow here? And there some maintaining company even tried to use poison to make it look nice, this pond. But eventually, this picture is also taken after it was the second summer. And the thing why people they don't want to wait. They want the solutions to be ready at once. Like when you build a house, then the house is ready after building. But these semi-natural meadows, they take time. They are. But please, next slide. We also changed during this National Museum project. We changed the street, which comes from city center of Tartu to the museum, and we. Some of the plants were planted, some seeded, but these purple, they came by themselves. And now is, I think, the first year when people don't complain anymore about the street, because now it looks more like beautiful to everyone. Next slide, please. Then we started to think about how is it possible somehow to quicken the process. And then we started to test the meadow mat. This is the same as lawn mat. You just cut it off and roll like a carpet. And this my partner, and he's growing this normal, usual lawn mat, but we made a field like this is 1,000 square meters, and this is first summer after seeding. It looked like that. We made just please next slide. We made some pictures for starting to show it off, like someone, is there someone who is interested? As you see, there was in first summer there were a lot of these yellow, and so the field looked quite not so. There wasn't much of variety, but this year this is totally different. Please, next slide. This was how we harvested it last year, and this is the like a normal meadow mat, but we didn't we gutted it first also, so that's why otherwise when you put it to the right place, then it looks too messy and ugly. But if you cut it first, then you of course see the result next year. Please, next slide. So this year This year it looks more there are more variety in plants, and we gutted it in the autumn, and we removed the plants. And we also the problem also in cities is that the soil is. A moment. Sorry, I'm on vacation and in one island. Okay. That is. I think we missed one slide.
This one?
No, the previous one.
This one?
No, one back.
Okay.
No, not this one. One after that.
Here.
There should be some with the tractor.
We haven't seen it.
Weird. Okay, well, this year we tested that we gutted it. We didn't cut the grass first, but we digged this meadow as it was, and we replaced it immediately to the city center. We have there, well, this one that we just I don't know the word now in English, but no. Meantime, there was the picture with the tractor. No.
Yes, we've seen it. Big rolls, yes?
No. No. After that, maybe it's easier when I try to share my screen, or.
Yeah, that would be better, I think.
Or maybe my well, this one. So we didn't like roll them. We just replaced 1 square meter pieces to another place. Well, this is the result. We have in Tartu city center this year. We closed a very big street for cars and opened it for people. And this our meadow mat is used there as a temporary greenery. And then after that, it will be put down permanently in the city center. We try to also Tartu is the culture capital of 2024, a European culture capital, and one of the biggest projects during this is with my colleagues. This is called curated biodiversity, and we're starting to change city center parks into biodiversical places. Now they are like any normal park with a lot of lawn and big trees. The project will end 2024, but we have started doing it now because of this time that the meadows take to be ready, so-called. Please, next slide. In Tartu, there's an area of old garages which no one is using anymore. Okay, this is the last one, but this garage this garage area, we also the owners asked us the meadow mat that they want to make it look natural. So now they are testing it also to put it down there. And yeah, to create our fields and the plant communities, we only use seeds taken from Estonian nature. There is only one man in Estonia who collects those seeds with quite a big amounts. And when he built himself a machine, and he goes to meadows to collect the seeds. And now he also has a fields where he grows seeds. So we also don't want to use any Holland seeds or from Germany. Or the one goal is also to help Estonian plants, because actually this kind of normal plants, they are quite big trouble. They are not left them so much anymore because of this mowing and because of this agriculture, which is really rude, using of poisons and stuff. So that's why we only use seeds from Estonian nature. Yes, thank you.
Спасибо большое. Очень жаль, что вы плохо себя чувствуете. Мы очень надеемся на скорейшее выздоровление.
Thank you very much. Get well soon. I'm very sorry that you're not feeling well today. Thank you for being with us for the last 2 hours. Well, there are solutions like this, and it's great that you have places to grow seeds in Estonia, and there are people who do it. And I know that it took us today longer than we planned originally, but still I would like to give everyone some time to say the final words today. Because let's start with Lena, because she's obviously in a rush. Thank you very much for inviting me. If anyone has any questions for me personally, please send me the questions. That's a very good topic that you chose today. But what is important is the sincere interest on the part of public. And in Poland, for example, we had Greta Thunberg visiting us, which was quite a big thing. And recently I had an opportunity to hear a lecture where it was implied that we really have to shift to building different ecological ambience with different houses. But the thing is that however ecological anything is, it will be only sustainable in case it sells well. And but so far the situation is that we don't really have to wait for something to be sold to us or to implemented by other people. We are free to create meadows and gardens of our own. It's not that difficult. And as I said, our local people, we work with a lot of local people who buy planting material from us, and they hire a landscape designer, and they do a garden or a landscape project in their area. And I was very happy to see some of my colleagues who I greatly miss because of this situation of prolonging lockdown. Thank you very much. I'm still expecting some questions. I'd like to I'll try to monitor the discussion that is going on in our comment section on YouTube and Facebook. Vitaly, what have you learned from today's discussion, apart from the fact that public are eager to understand your experience? What I learned is that we do have a lot of things in common, and we're doing something together, and we'd like to try a lot harder and invite specialists working on specific grass mixtures and thinking of a particular end product, and we will have to adjust it to our local climate and natural conditions. But unfortunately, we can only do that only when there's production, an industry of production of seeds. Maybe Karen can come up with something and start exporting seeds to Russia.
Yeah, I think from maybe perhaps buying seeds from Estonian nature is more alike to than those which are grown in Dutch. When we didn't use Estonian seeds, we tried to use it from Finland or in Latvia and Lithuania. As far as I know, no one is also growing or collecting them. It's wise to use the seeds as close as possible.
Конечно, согласна. Людмила, обращаюсь к вам.
Людмила, over to you. Please sum up our today's conversation. Me, yes.
Как дизайнер, как преподаватель, как популяризатор и так далее, да, со своей стороны, конечно, как бы я готова, мы все готовы все больше раскачивать эту лодку, поднимать.
As a professor, as a landscape designer, as someone who works in this field, I'm more than ready to keep on rocking this boat and letting people know about our problems. We are experimenting on some private properties, and we are not that optimistic in terms of public spaces. It's a very complicated and complex question, and in fact, we really have to turn this process around, and we are unfortunately very much dependent on public demand and what society demands in this respect. And we have to do our best in terms of forming that, shaping that demand. And we had some stories from Krakow Department of Greening a while back, and what they told us was absolutely rocket science and non-applicable to what we have here, as they had seed handouts to the local people so that the locals could plant the seeds themselves to improve the environment around them. And we have to do something similar, and finally we might have a new customer shaped. But the more we talk about it, the more readily people, decision makers will maybe hear us and break this wall that still exists between us and those seeding problems that we have been discussing. And if that happens, then it would at least partially help us. And if this happens, if there's demand, we have a lot of specialists and botanical scientists who are more than ready to start working. Igor, can you tell us if there were any economical calculations in terms of students? Oh, I had some calculation and some estimates in terms of cost. I did it a few years ago, and talking about maintenance and servicing, I can only say that it's definitely a lot more cost effective because the only couple of times that you have to mow our meadows once or twice a year, as opposed to at least several times a year with the lawn, plus fertilizing, plus other stuff. But we really have to start generating information flow, working with people and with municipalities. And people often say that we really have to work with the authorities. But in my point of view, we really have to spread this knowledge and reach out to private customers, because the more it is in demand with the private customer, the sooner it will be transitioned and shifted towards public spaces. But I'm sure that at least we have this way available for us. Thank you very much for participation. Thank you very much for a very interesting discussion. I will invite you later to comment on. We have a very massive commenting that's been going on, and this discussion should not stop. And we now have an opportunity to be on the forefront of this whole thing. Thank you very much. See you next time.